WDI is super excited to be launching a new training plan package, and these training plans are designed to be used in conjunction with the assessments that you're already doing with your puppies. Assessments take a lot of time and a lot of effort, and currently many organizations are using the data to improve their dogs in the next generation. But what we want to really focus on is how do we help you to get the most out of the dogs you currently have. You have clients waiting for those dogs. Puppy raisers are hard to come by right now. Lots of organizations are having problems procuring enough puppies for training. So the more that we can make dogs that you currently have in training behave really well and increase their chances of placement with clients, the better off everyone's going to be. So let's start with what the training plan package includes, and then we'll go into the details of why it works. So what it includes is 24 training plans with alternate versions for each for if chronic stress is a contributing factor. So that's 48 different training plans. And then one training plan for puppies who don't have any major concerns. They're calm, they're steady Eddie, but you still want to give their puppy raiser something to go away with to work on. They have invested the time in bringing the dog for assessment, and there's always things that we can work on. And then 23 game and information sheets to support the training plans, which can also be used individually as needed, and notes for trainers to help you administer the training plans. Each of these sheets can be viewed digitally, or for raisers who prefer paper copies, they can be printed as 8.5 by 11s or as half-page printouts to make them more portable. So how these training plans work is a little bit different than behavior-based training plans you might be familiar with from the past. What the training plan does is it takes the information that you have acquired in your assessment, and it then translates that into a ready-made plan that you can hand out to your puppy raisers so they're good to go. It's going to start by separating the type of emotional regulation that your dog has. And so on the Russell dimensional model that separates kind of behavior into 4 separate quadrants, does your dog respond to novelty in the environment with pessimism and low arousal, so they inhibit? Do they respond with activation and pessimism, and so they activate under stress to try and relieve that stress? Are they optimistic, but in response to novelty, they get excitable? Or are they nice and calm and they are optimistic and, they are nice, level, steady eddies? And the reason that we want to start with identifying how often our dogs go out of kind of a productive emotional state and what their way of coping is that helps to determine what skills we need them to build in order to be successful, both in their career and also just as a dog happy in the world. So for instance, dogs who inhibit with stress, they suppress. And if you have ever run into people in your life who do that, there's no actual way out of the stress without some kind of action. And so just getting more inhibited and more suppressed doesn't actually help. So with those dogs, we need to get them into movement and being able to use movement to cope with stress and also to relieve stress. With dogs who already have the movement skills but are still on the pessimistic side, we need them to start building optimism so that they are able to say, hey, less of the things in the environment stress me out, and make it so that I need to react. And then with our dogs who are excitable, we need to get them into a range of arousal that is more appropriate for who they are. You might think our calm dogs are off the hook. When I've looked at assessment data in the past, what we find is our calm dogs still tend to rate high for sniffing, scavenging, and dog distraction. And that is likely because those are species appropriate behaviors. They're kind of outlets that they need. So we can still work on those. Once we know kind of how the dog tends to be emotionally, we then go and determine whether or not chronic stress is acting upon the dog. And so if you have a dog who is showing some kind of behavior struggles or reactions on a daily basis, probably stress is a big part of that. If you kind of imagine it as a pot on the stove, the heat's being turned up, the heat's being turned up, the heat's being turned up, and the dog looks like they're coping, looks like they're coping, looks like they're coping, and all of a sudden it hits the boiling point, the lid comes off and it bubbles over. And then once it's bubbled over, lid goes back on and it can withstand a little bit more stress, but it's always at that boiling over point, as opposed to a dog who has low stress and their pod is at room temperature. There's no risk it's going to boil over, and there's so much capacity to have experience stress and have a chance to work through it before they hit that boiling over point. So if we have dogs who are reacting a lot, or who are reacting in a lot of different ways, so they're showing a lot of different behavior problems, then we're going to assume that stress is playing a big part of that, and we're going to put them on a plan that addresses stress. If they are not reacting very frequently, and this is just a case of in assessment, when we've been putting them in a novel situation and we've been trigger stacking, we notice that they have more dog distraction, but it's not super disruptive. We're just noting that it's there. They're really interested in things that move in their environment, that sort of thing. We're going to start to help them develop skills to deal with those types of challenges. So it isn't that they're constantly reacting, but we can still say their temperament sways this way. So that's how the training plans are put together. They identify kind of what the emotional struggle is, whether or not stress is a big factor, and then they combine the traits that you're assessing into struggle clusters. So the underlying struggles that cause these different traits to manifest are the same. And so let's say a dog is struggling with environmental soundness. That would be, the dog reacts to traffic. The dog reacts to noise. The dog reacts to new environments. The dog is nervous with new people. It's all of those things that the same underlying struggles are driving the behaviors and causing those traits to manifest. So that's how those are going to be separated into struggle clusters. And one thing that's really important to note is your temperament assessments are assessing temperament traits. And there's a lot of confusion about what a temperament trait is. And so temperament is genetically how you're predisposed to be. So, within humans, some people are more neurotic than others. Some people are more conscientious than others. Those are kind of inborn. That's the way the person is. But the expression of that trait is not purely genetic. That's the same thing with the dogs, is we may say their temperament skews towards inhibited. That isn't a proclamation that they are always going to cope the same way. It's just that we then need to build skills to help them overcome it. And that's how we build personality. So personality is those inborn temperament traits combined with the environment. And that's what makes personality. So what we're looking to do is we're looking to say, okay, so I know that you tend more towards one thing or the other. We're going to help you build some skills, and we're going to see if we can get you to a point where you can function well enough that it isn't a problem that makes it so that you're not suitable for our program. And the nice thing is, with most of these dogs, you're going to be doing another assessment down the road. And so you're going to be able to judge whether or not you've seen that movement. Now, the reason that we teach this through games is that if we are putting dogs in situations that they find triggering, there's a couple of things that could be happening. One is it could just be that thing that's making the lid come off, but it's not what's contributed to most of the stress that they've experienced. And so we could be wrong about what we think is triggering the dog. Things like noise reactivity. There's some discussion now about whether noise reactivity is just generalized anxiety. And so, yes, maybe noises are what makes it happen most of the time, but it's really the cumulative effect of all the other stresses that the dog's experiencing that come out in noise reactivity. So there's the risk that we are wrong about what we think that the trigger is. But also we're putting dogs in a situation then over and over that are difficult and hoping that everything lines up so that we don't have a reaction and we're actually counter conditioning. We're putting puppy raisers or fosters in a situation where they probably feel a lot of apprehension because they've had struggles there with the dog in the past, and the dog is getting that information down the leash as well. So you've now got a dog that's apprehensive and a handler that's apprehensive, and it's teaching them context specifically how to behave in those situations rather than giving them the skills to deploy across situations. And so games-based training now is pretty widespread in professional development. So surgeons are using games-based training, pilots are using games-based training. And one of the really nice things is it gives them the skills to lean on, that the situation that they run into doesn't have to be the exact situation that they ran into in training. They have the skills to pull from so that they can apply those skills across a wide context of situations. So that's what we're trying to do with the dogs, is we're taking them out of those positions of struggle. We're building up those skills so that it just becomes a part of who the dog is. And basically, if they, let's say they're more inhibited and so they lean towards pessimistic, we're wanting to build a skill that says, most of the world is good. If you're not sure most of the world is good, maybe roll the dice and think maybe this situation is good as well, rather than like, oh gosh, everything's bad, everything's bad, everything's bad. One note, because it will be important for some organizations, some of these training games do involve thrown food. And the reason for this is that so many of the dogs lack movement skills and the ability to use movement to resolve stress. And thrown food gives them that ability to move, and it gives them that ability to move explosively sometimes, which they need in order to resolve the stress. And the way that it's done is in a way to promote re-engagement with the handler right away. And so some organizations that we've worked with, there's been some trepidation about using thrown food, because what if we end up with a scavenging problem down the road? And to that, I'd say, it's a bit of a leap of faith, and we're kind of what-ifing the situation. And so instead of saying this dog has a major dog distraction issue and is not engaged with the handler, and this dog is going to get released for this problem, we say, yes, but what if we solve this problem and then we have scavenging? And so, it's one of those things about, let's deal with the problem that we have now. And in my experience with many, many dogs, we have not developed a scavenging issue, because the dog learns that part of the game is bouncing back to the handler. They want to participate in the game. That contra freeloading urge is really strong. And so we end up with a dog that becomes way more engaged because of thrown food. They are not scavenging on the ground. They are not looking for garbage. They are really looking for that engagement with the handler now. And we've amped up our reinforcer so that it's competing with those things in the environment that are moving and that are exciting and that are dynamic. And instead we've put that in the hands of our puppy raisers. So not all of the exercises involve thrown food, and there are ways to set it up if you're really concerned in terms of having mats and throwing to mats or beds. However, if you are worried about the food throwing, I would say, every organization tends to have those couple of dogs that are on the bubble that you're pretty sure are going to get released and you don't have a solution to their problems. Try it with them. And then you can see if it makes a difference, if it creates additional problems. I'm fairly confident it won't, in my experience with all the dogs I've worked with. But if you're really concerned about it, try it that way before implementing it across. It's $199 Canadian. For our friends with stronger currencies, it's even less than that. And so in terms of if one dog becomes successful in your program because of it, it's going to be money well spent. And I believe that once you kind of get over the reservations about throwing food that are kind of really hardly baked into many of us, that you'll see that it makes a big difference. So I'm super excited about these training packages. It has been a dream of mine for years to be able to take that assessment data and then just have these reports ready to hand out to your raisers. In a time where raisers are hard to get and hard to retain, giving raisers something in exchange for coming to the assessment is really beneficial. Giving raisers games to play with their dog really builds relationship instead of struggle. And the research supports that one of the absolute most important things that we can do during adolescence is to invest in supporting relationship rather than drilling skills or anything else. If we build strong relationships, that has really positive effects. And, it brings fun into a situation that has been really wrought and full of struggle before. So I am very excited. I know that trainers have very limited time, and the idea of writing a training plan for everybody that comes to assessment is super appealing, but having the time to actually do it doesn't usually happen. So here they are. We have done them for you, and I wish you all sorts of success with your puppies in training.